After the release of Hermit, who have virtually no balance change, every hunter released afterward is mostly overpowered, with Nightwatch being one of the highest prioritized hunters back in its release, the Opera Singer being picked by OP even until now, the next Full Skull being a weak hunter for the most part. Then finally, Ivy the Shadow, with an interesting concept while being a powerful hunter. Even after everything, Full Skull receiving buffs yet still being weak, while the strong hunters released apart from Nightwatch who just needed a few changes for him to be balanced. Opera Singer and Ivy stay as the pick brain OP hunters, caused by them being conceptually broken. With the Goatman being the next hunter to be released, will he be another pick brain OP hunter, or an extremely weak hunter caused by the fundamentals of his kit? Or perhaps an extremely balanced hunter just like Hermit? Let's get right into the video. This video is made to only express my opinion. If you have any different opinion, feel free to tell us in the comments. His passive ability, Cage of the Lost Lambs, Confinement. Jeffrey, the Goatman, creates a cage that is impossible to escape. It has a physical barrier, blocking all characters from entering or exiting. He gains 2 resentment points per second for up to 120. Resentment is energy points that characters like Soulweaver and Evil Reptilian have. Lastly, survivors within the cage loses 10% interaction speed. He will be the next hunter to limit the distancing survivors' potential, since the survivors who excel at getting distance will still be forced to stay inside the cage. Although, he could block the area off by putting them right on the outer edge of the cage, or caging the good kiting area completely. Its effect is somewhat low, since the survivors can just go around it, as well as him losing damage that we will talk about later, and the survivors being able to just break the cage. But we don't know the specifics yet, therefore, it isn't for sure if this will be a big deal or not. Second part of this passive, when a character runs into the edge of the cage, they'll teleport to the opposite side of the cage. 2 seconds cooldown for survivors and 0.8 for the hunter. This is an interesting factor, since even when the survivors are blocked off, depending on where the other side of the cage is, it could end up bringing them into a better spot since it isn't a gap close tool by any means by itself, since the survivors can also go through the cage or mind game to keep the hunter guessing. I decided to add this part after finishing everything. So I noticed that he could just place the edge of the cage to make the survivors walk into it, therefore teleport right into him as well. So overall, it is probably a good ability, since even more mind game is now put into it while him being advantaged. While both survivor side and the hunter side can do it, but we still don't know how it is exactly, and survivors might have good chances to react to it, so I guess we'll just have to see. Now we will talk about the second passive, Fortified. Both hunters and survivors can break a cage from the inside and the outside. However, when a free moving survivor is inside the cage, other survivors cannot break it from the outside. When near a rocket chair with a survivor on it, it can be broken faster by survivors. It sounds as simple as it is. This is mostly just another small addition to the cage so that the survivors can still leave the area that is caged if they wanted to. Which means, he can't just cage someone on the edge. This limits the gap close potential for him, since it doesn't take long to remove, as well as not being able to just use it to cage survivors without himself being in it as well, since he will have to break it to get into it. Furthermore, his last passive, Shackled. If he gets a hit inside the cage, it disappears. Outside the cage, he only does half the damage. This is the most important balancing factor, since with the previous point, he cannot put the edge of the cage right at the survivor's face. Since the survivors can just break the cage, then he loses a lot of pressure, since his cage is required to deal damage. While the cage uses energy, as well as not being too difficult to break, therefore, even when the survivors cannot get to a safe area after breaking them, he will only do half the damage while giving the survivor a speed boost anyway. Now this is time for his active abilities. His first active ability, Dominion. Jeffrey has complete control over his cages, and can assert their sizes as he wishes. The only purpose of this ability is to either limit the area in which the survivor can kite, make the cage bigger to fit both him and the survivor in, or sometimes use it as a movement ability, but it isn't too big of a deal overall. Second active ability, Enclosure. He uses energy to put up a cage that lasts 11 seconds, and after already making one, he uses less energy to make another. This is where most of his skill ceiling comes from. With multiple cages coming into effect, the players can quickly get confused by all the cages being spawned, It can also be used to slowly close down the area, since he can change the size of the cage, then, therefore, have a higher chance of getting a hit. His third active ability, as well as his tier 1 ability, Backstep. Jeffrey leaps backwards. If he crosses the edge of the cage during this leap, the duration is refreshed. Additionally, there is no cooldown for transporting within the cage while leaping. Cages can be released while jumping. This will most likely be used in combination with the cage, since putting a cage then leaping backwards to teleport to the other side of the cage, while having the distance refreshed, means that this will be a very convenient way to gap close down to survivors, as well as adding some more mind game factors, since if he does that, the survivors will need to get out of his way or go backwards, otherwise reaching the edge and teleport to the other side. As well as being able to dash backwards, and then release the cage at the perfect time to reappear right on the survivors, without having much time to react to it. This will be his most difficult and highest potential, as well as the best chasing method he will have. This is his most important chasing ability, since the cage itself doesn't do all that much. But this adds a ton to his chasing potential, which means it's fairly likely for him to bring insolence, but we'll see about this one. Although the cage seems like his whole character, in my opinion, without the back leap, the cage will be very underwhelming overall, since although it limits the survivors in one area, unless that area is completely open, otherwise it is not all that difficult to last 11 seconds in the right spots, as well as it rewarding you a lot if you can last through, or break the barrier for him to do only half the damage. Goatman with and without cage is two different characters. Overall, the Goatman seems to be a very confusing hunter to play and to play against. Having decently high potential with his playstyle being fairly flexible, while having a low skill floor if the player can't fully utilize his potential. Having a very interesting concept while having a very efficient counterplay. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, it would be most appreciated if you could leave a like and subscribe. If you have any other opinions on this topic, feel free to share in the comments. Until next time, have a wonderful day.